This is where I effed up. An LSD, 5-MeO-DMT, diazepam and alprazolam trip report by I effed up. Posted to earwid.org June 18th, 2006. My life just took a horrible turn for the worst. I am not at my lowest point, however, thanks to being out on bail and away from the hellishness of being confined to a jail cell. Where I effed up on a warm Saturday night 10 days ago was with the choice to eat the benzos, Xanax and Valium. I do not have benzo tolerance and rarely use them. I'd finally come across some and decided to eat a few. At around 5 PM Saturday, I ate 2 milligrams of alprazolam and 20 milligrams of diazepam, 2 blue pills of each, figuring this would mellow me out after the hard week I had at work. I had no plans that night and the next day, so I made plans to get intoxicated. I had a small collection of acid and 5-MeO-DMT as well, which I had not touched in months, but I did not specifically plan to trip. At around 6 PM, I am definitely intoxicated in a drunken-like way, but with less euphoria and some slight depression and confusion. I stumble to my small substance collection and eat 2 more blue Xanax. I wanted to be a little bit more into oblivion, because I was feeling slightly depressed, which was from the benzos in the first place, but I didn't realise it at the time. From 6 to 7 PM, I spent my time stumbling around out in my yard feeling almost like a kid. I ran around and rolled in the grass some. Then I got up and took off running into the house and back to my room. I pushed on the closed door thinking it was open a crack, and my face whacked right into it. I could definitely feel the pain despite my intoxication. I got into my room and got into my drugs. I pulled out a 5-strip of Futurama blotter acid somewhere around 7 PM and ate it. I got really excited, thinking I was going to blast off to some wonderful psychedelic reality that I have read about but never had the balls to attempt entering. Then I got out my aluminium foil pipe and threw an eyeballed amount of 5-MeO-DMT in it. It was what looked like 20 grains of salt. This would definitely not be something I would do sober. Same with the acid. I inhaled the rough-tasting substance and held my breath. Soon a wang 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 noise surrounded me, like nitrous but much more menacing. A tense feeling spread through my body. I felt my heart get squeezed, then break, and I was bleeding all over myself internally. I was so scared but knew there was nothing I could do, so I just tried to accept that I was going to die for sure this time. I saw a bright white light and couldn't see much anything else. I do not remember what else happened. The next thing I know, I am laying outside in my yard twitching all over violently, but not quite seizure-like. I see the clouds morphing shapes and colours. I see all imaginable colours floating through the sky. The sun was setting, so I guess this was around 7:45 PM. I also, in this moment, hear voices and a strange music that could never be synthesized. It sounded very alien and started to frighten me. I got up off the ground and started to stop twitching. I thought I was coming down from the acid since I was confused. At this point, I don't think I remember smoking the 5-MeO-DMT. I only think I am coming down from the acid already. Maybe it's because the 5-MeO-DMT trip seemed to last many hours when it only lasted minutes, but I cannot be completely sure of this. I go in the house, which took a lot of effort because I was very uncoordinated. Everything was liquid, and I became convinced this was actually the real world and that my experience of sober reality before this trip had illusioned me into thinking solids existed. Everything seemed so real, clearer than ever before despite the melting fractals and distortions. I remember trying to figure out how to open a beer can. I sat at my kitchen table pressing the tab in wrong directions and could not do it whatsoever. I ended up cracking a hole in it with a juice can opener and sipping through it. I kept hearing the strange alien music getting louder, and I heard voices in specific directions that startled me. I do not remember the specifics of what the voices said, but suddenly it became apparent that I must get out of my house or something horrible was going to happen to me. I remember running out of my front door in a panic. Most of what happens next is pieced together from my neighbour's account, who was an acquaintance, and the police reports. I do recall some flashes of the events, but most are clips that are a few nanoseconds in length that I cannot accurately describe. I ran to my neighbour's house across the street and past a big yard. Houses are spread out a good bit around here. I went up to his mailbox and dug my hands inside. He must have saw me run up to his door because he came out right away and said, "Hey," my name, "what the hell are you doing?" with a slightly threatening but confused tone. I do remember him saying this, but barely, to be honest. All I did was stare at him. He said I looked like a frightened, insane animal ready to pounce. "You don't look so good. How about we just take a walk back to your house right now?" He took a step back and balled up his fists, telling me this. I yelled, "He told me to come. He told me I would find my answer right here." I then sat down, curled up in a ball. "Do you need me to call an ambulance or something?" And then I snapped. I don't know and can't guess what the fuck was going through my head at this point. I just screamed in a non-human way, as it was later described, and tore into my neighbour. I beat and kicked at him with all I had. At first, he acted defensively and put up his arms to defend himself. Then he ran back into his house and came out with a can of mace. I ran away, sensing danger. It came to me again, apparently, that I must get into my neighbour's house. It was extremely important to my survival. By this time, it was night. My neighbour had gone back inside to call the cops. I walked around back of his house to sliding glass doors, and I remember touching the glass and wondering what was stopping my finger, because I could see right through the door. I thought of it as a force field of some type that was a test. If I could pass the test of getting past this freak, but purposely placed occurrence, I would find what I was looking for. And so, I picked up a small metal table and whirled it into the glass force field with all the strength that I had. It broke the glass and kept on going about 5 feet. I walked through the destroyed force field and felt like I'd accomplished an important step of some kind of goal I was going after, which I unfortunately cannot remember. I heard footsteps coming fast from the other side of the house. I sensed danger and leaped up to the steps that were to my left. I went into a dark room and saw a glowing clock. Its red letters burned into my memory, and now I cannot look at digital clocks without getting intense anxiety and confusion. So I picked up the clock and held it, and then my neighbour ran in, flicks on the light and unleashes hell onto me. I remember thinking something like I was being attacked by a supernatural force. I couldn't breathe or see. My upper body was burning, and I literally thought I had caught on fire. I fought for my life and thrashed into everything with my fists. I stumbled around and fell down the steps I had walked up. I screamed so loud many neighbours arrived before the cops did, keeping distance. When the cops arrived at my neighbour's house, my neighbour was on the ground holding his head, whilst I was in the house breaking things and screaming. Cops rushed in with guns drawn. "Get down on the ground, now!" I couldn't understand language. Everything was just sounds at this point for me. I didn't know what language was, so I was unable to follow the pig's instructions. Then I felt a stab and my body seize. It was the most painful thing I've ever felt, and I can't imagine anything worse. They had shot me with a taser. 2 darts within me, in fact, blasting me to the ground in a silenced, choking agony. The paramedics came and treated me on the scene, now in my neighbour's yard, with saline for my eyes and a bandage for my hands, which were badly beaten up. They gave me an examination of blood pressure and heart rate, then said I was okay to be put into police custody. Apparently they repeatedly asked me what I had taken, and finally I had answered, shrooms. I'd rather not go into detail about the jail cell I was in because it will induce unpleasant flashbacks as writing this has already done for me. I will just say it was hell to understate it. The cops were real assholes to me. When I got to the police station, they literally threw me in my jail cell and said, "You are fucked." I was charged with assault, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, vandalism, trespassing, and possession of a Schedule 4 substance. I had 5 Xanax pills in my pocket. I was bailed out by a close family member who was severely disappointed and upset with me, as they would be. The bail was set at $3,500. It was a hell of a journey to hell. I will never trip on anything again. I've lost all desire for altered states, and plus I now will face jail soon and a long probation. My lawyer says he will try to negotiate a 30-day sentence, but he cannot promise it will be that small. My neighbour was cool about it though. Well, not cool, but as cool as someone could be in his situation. I called him and apologised, and he told me what happened. He didn't lecture me at all about drugs or my actions. At the end of our somewhat brief conversation, all he said to me was, "Good luck," and finally hung up on me.